Namaskaram to all of you. Good morning.
Namaskaram, Sadhguru.
All the doctors, am I looking crazy enough?
Very nice.
Am I looking like a client, I'm asking? Please,
We're all
please,
clients.
please go ahead, Bala, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Sadhguru. Welcome all to this panel on mental health pandemic. Mental health is an emerging crisis during COVID pandemic. There is an increasing awareness of this problem, and it's time to engage in a meaningful conversation with renowned experts in this field. It's my privilege and fortune to be part of this elite panel. I would like to introduce the panel participants first. Professor Murali Doraiswamy is a professor of psychiatry. He's a professor of psychiatry and medicine at Duke University School of Medicine. He serves as the director of Neurocognitive Disorders Program. He's a highly respected researcher at the Duke Institute for Brain Sciences. He serves as an advisor to leading government agencies, advocacy groups, and businesses. He specializes in the areas of brain health and personalized medicine and leads a clinical trials unit in developing novel personal diagnostics and therapeutics for cognitive enhancement and mental well-being. He has served as a chair of World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council on Brain Research and lectured at leading global forums to advance the forefront of neuroscience research. Moreover, as a co-author of a popular book, The Alzheimer's Action Plan, and co-author on more than 350 publications, he has received several awards in recognition of his scientific work and his involvement in pivotal landmark trials that have helped develop many modern neurotherapeutics. His research has been featured in media outlets such as BBC, the New York Times, Scientific American, the Wall Street Journal, National Public Radio, CBS Evening News, The Dr. Oz Show, Oprah Show, and Time. He has appeared in acclaimed documentaries such as Honesty, The Truth About Lies and Mysteries of the Brain. It is our pleasure to have you, Dr. Murali Doraiswamy.
That's wonderful. Namaskaram, Murali.
It's an honor, great honor to be here with all of you, such distinguished experts.
Thank you. Next, we have David Vago. He's a cognitive neuroscientist by training, has an academic pedigree from Vanderbilt, Harvard, and Cornell Medical Schools, with over 15 years of experience conducting research in the field of mindfulness, integrative medicine, and neuropsychiatry, and over 25 years of experience as a meditation and yoga practitioner. He has written some of the most cited research in the area of mindfulness and integrative health. Dr. Vago is currently the director of the Contemplative Neuroscience and Integrative Medicine Laboratory in the Osher Center for Integrative Medicine at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. He's an associate professor in the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation and the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. He also maintains an appointment as a research associate.
Hey, it's a long thing, I didn't realize you have such a long citation. Sorry.
Welcome, David.
Yes, thank
David,
you
namaskaram. You're close by, in Nashville.
Yes, so far, not so far, but it's nice to be sharing time and space with you here today.
Next up, we have Dr. Vijaya Appareleddy. She's triple boarded in adult, child psychiatry, and addiction medicine from Mount Sinai, New York. She has been the president for Tri-State Psychiatric Services, Chattanooga, Tennessee, from 1992. She serves as American Medical Association Council on Legislation member from July 2018 through present. Most notably, she successfully lobbied as a legislative committee member in 2009 for the name change to intellectual disabilities instead of mental retardation to remove the stigma associated with it. She was appointed as vice chairperson by President Bush to the prestigious President Committee on People with Intellectual Disabilities from September 2002 to 2006, and by President Trump from March 2018 to present. She served at the American Medical Association to end healthcare disparities from 2012. She's also a liaison for API for Women Physicians section of the AMA. She has authored several textbooks, most notably The Siblings of Psychiatrically Disordered Child. She has been a panelist in several scientific symposiums and has won leadership awards, including the Outstanding Citizen Award from the former Prime Minister of India, Honorable P.V.N. Rao. Welcome, Dr. Appareleddy.
Namaskaram, ma.
My name is Bala Subramaniam, and I'm an associate professor at the Harvard Medical School and LSNC G. Pierce Endo Chair of Anesthesia at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center at Harvard Teaching Hospital. I completed my anesthesia MD from the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, went on to do my anesthesia residency and cardiac anesthesia fellowship at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. I also completed my master's in public health from the Harvard School of Public Health. My interest spans from improving perioperative outcomes, provider outcomes, and also investigating yoga and meditation sciences. Thank you.
Namaskaram.
Sadhguru is a yogi, mystic, and visionary. Named one of India's 50 most influential people, Sadhguru's work has touched the lives of millions of people worldwide through his transformational programs. He has been conferred the Padma Vibhushan, India's highest annual civilian award, accorded for exceptional and distinguished service. An internationally renowned speaker and author of the New York Times bestseller, Inner Engineering, A Yogi's Guide to Joy, Sadhguru has been an influential voice at major global forums, including the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and the World President's Organization, addressing issues as diverse as socio-economic development, leadership, and spirituality. He's also been invited to speak frequently at leading educational institutions, including Oxford, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Wharton, and MIT, among others. More than 3 decades ago, Sadhguru founded Isha Foundation, a nonprofit human service organization with human well-being as its core commitment. The foundation is supported by over 11 million volunteers in more than 300 centers worldwide. Namaskaram, Sadhguru.
Namaskar.
Welcome all to this exciting panel. Namaskaram, Namaste, Vanakkam, wherever you are. During the pre-COVID times, most of us knew someone with mental health issues. According to the Center for Diseases in CDC, USA, mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps how we handle stress, relate to others, and make healthy choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. How common is it? This is pre-COVID. About 1 in 5 Americans, child or adult, will experience a mental illness in a given year. That is about 20%. More than half of us will be diagnosed with a mental illness or disorder at some point in our lifetime. That's a staggering number. 1 in 25 of us will have a serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or major depression. No small thing. 42 million people with anxiety disorders, 60 million people with major depression, 6 million with bipolar disorders, 2.4 million with schizophrenia. These numbers are all US numbers, and imagine multiplying this by X times for throughout the world. Suicide is the second leading cause of death from 10 to 34 years of age. That is remarkable. I was just blown away when I was just looking for these numbers in the last week or so. Now enter COVID in this scenario. More than 56% of Americans reported worry or stress related to this outbreak. New poll from American Psychiatry Association suggests anxiety in 40% of people, just the fear of death. And 60% of people are worried about giving it to others. Our society is in a collective state of trauma. An emerging potential crisis, says Professor Keenan from the Harvard School of Public Health. Social support that exists normally is pulled away because of social distancing. Professor Sandro Gallia from the Boston University School of Public Health warns us of long-term trauma because of this pandemic. Lessons from previous disasters like hurricanes, 9/11, etc., reiterates this issue. I hear that hotlines for mental health help are overused. Fear and worry about your own health, health of loved ones, financial situation, loss of jobs, social isolation, difficulty sleeping or concentrating, increased use of tobacco, alcohol. About 1 in 6 adults had 4 or more binge drinking in a month during pre-COVID. And imagine now, I heard that about 1,800% increase in sales of alcohol and tobacco just before they shut it down. Everyone reacts differently to these stressful situations. Perceived stress, that is the key. Maladaptation to stressors will lead to serious consequences. Now enter racial disparities, the big name right now in US. Stress is through the roof. Josh Gordon, director of National Institute of Mental Health, on June 19, 2020 wrote, worse mental health outcomes in underserved and minority communities, increased suicide rates in Black youth, systematic racism, so much so that success rate for Black applicants for NIH funding, the highest agency out there, are dramatically lower even after adjustments for all the confounders out there. So this is a real problem, and this is time for us to look into some take-home messages from this webinar. With that framework, I would like to introduce Dr. Murali Doraiswamy to share his views on the current COVID pandemic and mental health issues, and also talk about the non-pharmacological interventions, especially in relevant to the neuroplasticity, etc. Dr. Murali.
Thank you, Bala, for that wonderful introduction. You're absolutely correct. We are in the midst of two pandemics, as you point out, COVID, and the other is social inequities, both of which have a very big impact on our mental health. In fact, I refer to the COVID pandemic as perhaps the greatest psychological experiment that has ever been done on humans in our lifetimes. It's the first time that 8 billion people and 1.3 billion children have been issued stay-at-home orders. As you point out, over 100 million people have lost jobs, maybe even more than that. And there's countless people who have suffered health issues and loss of loved ones, and many people have not even been able to be at funerals when their loved ones have passed away. But at the same time, there's a lot that is unknown. Yes, there is the possibility of a mental health tsunami, but we also have to be cautious that we don't yet know what the scope and size of that will be. There are conflicting opinions still as to whether it'll be a mental health tsunami or a ripple, because humans have a tendency to adjust to transient stressors, and it depends on how long the COVID pandemic is going to last and how many waves there are going to be and how well we respond to these pandemics. Now, I think there are some lessons we can learn from our infectious disease colleagues. When we talk about COVID, everyone is now familiar with the term, we need to flatten the curve. And what we are talking about that is to take proactive measures, social distancing, wear a mask, contact tracing. So I think we need to think about our mental health in much the same way. And I think Sadhguru has referred to this elegantly in many of his talks. It's not about being reactive. Currently, society is reactive when it comes to mental health. We need to be proactive and predictive. So what do I mean by that? By proactive, we need to build resilience, inner resilience. We need to build social and emotional strengths through our networks. We need to build the way we react to stressors. And we also need to build our immune resilience. And all of these are tied together. And I will get into that. And the second thing, when I say predictive, what do we do with COVID? I think right now the focus, we need to test more people. We need to catch them early before they become really ill. We need to sort of make sure they get the best possible care. We still don't do that in mental health. There's an acute shortage of psychiatrists, of counselors, even in the richest countries around the world. In the US, 77% of all counties lack psychiatrists. And the child psychiatry shortage, as Dr. Appareleddy will point out, is even more acute. So could we use digital tools? Could we train lay workers? Could we come up with other solutions that can sort of replace this sort of the unmet need in the system for qualified professionals? And how do we build the capacity? So fighting COVID at the infectious disease level is all about building capacity. How can we build the capacity at the mental health level? And I'm going to talk a little bit about how technology tools, especially smartphones, smartwatches, may be very helpful for early detection when we don't have other tools to help people. So let me get back to the first one. How do we build resilience? So we know, I'm just going to talk about immunity first, because we all know that stress is linked to cortisol or stress hormones. And we know that when stress hormones go up, it depresses your immunity. People don't realize that there could be a direct connection between stress, immune function, and our human behavior, which is the third piece. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. There's some very interesting studies that have come out where they injected people with a very low level of a toxin to induce low levels of inflammation, much like what COVID might do in people who are asymptomatic or very mildly infectious. And then they did fMRI scanning of their brains to see how their brains react to familiar and unfamiliar faces. And what they found was that if you don't have low level of inflammation, then you recognized your friends as friends and you responded to familiar people in nice, comfortable ways. But if you had marginally elevated levels of inflammation in your body, you saw familiar people as threats. You were much more likely to be divisive, much more likely to recognize friends as not being friends. So there is a way that low levels of stress and inflammation affect not just our physical health, but the way we interact with people around us. And is there a way to break this cycle? Because stress can induce either a positive cycle or a negative cycle. The positive cycle of stress is, yes, inflammation. It sort of makes you divisive. It has damaging health effects on your heart, on your brain, on your cognition, on your sleep. Uncertainty breeds anxiety. But on the other hand, if you can defeat that, then you lead to a positive cycle where you're able to cope with stress and you're able to cope with uncertainty, because uncertainty is one of the things that our brains are most vulnerable to. And that is something I would love to get Sadhguru's opinion on. Why is the human brain so vulnerable to uncertainty? Why does it breed anxiety? You know, it's almost like the favorite of a horror story writer. They love uncertainty. They love building up the tension so that it drives you crazy. And that is exactly what the COVID virus is doing, because we don't have good solutions. It's infecting our minds. And so how can we overcome that? And that is one area. Now, I know that a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated the International Yoga Day. And I know that, Sadhguru spoke at the event. Now, yoga and meditative practices actually are an amazing tool to build resilience, both at the emotional level and at the immune level. Many of us don't think of yoga and meditative practices as a tool to boost immunity. There was a recent study that came out where they reviewed 15 published trials of meditative practices and yoga, and they showed that they boosted protective chemicals that are anti-inflammatory, and they reduced levels of pro-inflammatory chemicals that we call as cytokines. And within 1 hour of starting yoga practices, 111 genes were changed. The expression of 111 genes, many related to immune function and inflammatory functions, were changed. And for 1 week, just 1 week of practice, produce noticeable benefits. People think you have to practice 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to produce big changes. No, you can see short-term, immediate effects within even a week of practice. And the first generation of yoga studies on mental health were not that well done. They were not high-quality trials. They were small. They were not adequate controls. But now we have come to the second generation of yoga studies on mental health, and some of which we led and some of which others have led. There are over 100 good quality randomized controlled trials. These are the highest quality trials involving more than 100,000 participants in cumulative across all these studies. The biggest effects that you see with yoga are on stress, depression, anxiety, sleep, even some types of cognitive improvements. And in many of these studies, yoga was better than a waitlist control or no treatment. And in some of these studies, yoga was as good as a prescription medication for milder forms of mental illness. So clearly now, I think we have robust accumulating evidence that yes, yoga can help treat people with milder forms of mental illness, such as depression, anxiety, sleep. And the last point I want to make is in terms of neuroplasticity, and again, I think David is also perhaps going to touch on this. There are now emerging studies showing that yoga has both structural and functional effects on brain circuits and brain regions. So one of the areas that's of interest to me is the aging brain. We know that as our brain ages, there is shrinkage of various regions in the brain, especially the memory centers, the frontal lobes that are responsible for executive decision-making, which is so important during times of uncertainty. And experienced yoga practitioners have less age-related shrinkage of these critical brain regions, again, suggesting that there are potential neuroplastic effects of yoga on our brain. So I'm going to stop there with that, and I really look forward. I mean, I would love to get Sadhguru's opinion on, there's so many types of yoga and meditative practices. Are there specific types of practices that you think might help us with immunity? Of course, I'm not saying that yoga is a cure for COVID or a replacement for a vaccine, but to boost baseline immune function and baseline resilience, are there specific types of yoga practices that you think are particularly strong for that?
See, what I have to say may sound a bit tangential, though various things that you've said is very true, but you're speaking a certain language. The language is considered scientific, but please pardon me if I say something which is not right, because you must understand I'm not educated, so I speak the way I speak, okay? So, see, we are trying to have a keyhole vision of everything. We are looking at bits and bits, inflammatory markers, the chemical changes, neuroplasticity. The yogic sciences don't look at things like this. We look at the human being as an entirety. What happens in my little finger inevitably happens in my brain, all right? What happens in every cell in my body inevitably happens in my brain. First of all, in any of the yogic texts or any of the yogic lore, there is no mention of brain. So, what do you do with somebody like me who doesn't have a brain, who just has a turban, all right? So what do you do with me? Because we do not recognize brain as a very significant part of human ecology. We see mind means we say manomaya kosha, which means the entire body is a mind of its own. There is one layer of body which is doing mental functions on various levels. This, I would say, very skewed level of significance to the brain has essentially come because cultures which recognize human thought as the highest possibility in human life, which these kind of conclusions have come because societies were so dogmatic that they wouldn't allow you to think straight. They wouldn't allow you to think for yourself because somebody up there will think for you. So when they broke away from that and people started thinking for themselves, they felt so much kind of liberated from the dogmatic existence that they had. They started giving unnecessary levels of significance to human thought and emotion. In the yogic sciences, we don't pay heed to your thought process because we see your thought process as just recycling of the little data that you have. But what's happening in every cell in the body is a phenomenally more complex mechanism, phenomenally more complex activity than what is happening in terms of, thought and emotion circulating in your head. So, in terms of memory and in terms of intelligence, both ways, every cell in your body carries more memory than you can ever carry in your brain and more intelligence in terms of sophisticated and complicated activities that every cell in the body is doing. So, having said that, so there is a mind across the body. As there is a physical body, there is a mental body, there's an energy body, there's an etheric body. So depending upon your access that you have found to these 4 or 5 different dimensions of bodies, or the alignment of these first 3 bodies, the physical, mental and energy body, your mental health is decided by how well aligned these 3 dimensions are. Your physical body, your mental body and your energy body, if they're properly aligned, this means only then you find access to the 4th dimension of the body, which for lack of English words we call it etheric, but it is actually called as Vijnanamaya kosha. To explain Vijnan, 3 of you are from Indian background, so generally the word Vijnan is used as science. Vijnanam or Vijnana means science. Vijnan means Vishesh Jnan. That means that dimension of perception which you cannot have through your 5 senses. That means that dimension of perception that you cannot see, that you cannot hear, that you cannot smell and taste or touch, when you perceive that dimension, then we say it's Vijnana. So this is a dimension within you which is moving from physicality to a non-physical state. Because we see mind also as a physical thing. See, as if I wish, I can throw a thing at you. Similarly, I can throw a thought at you. So we treat thought as a physical process, emotion as a physical process. Because thought and emotion have a physical existence. Now that you can measure it on whatever kind of instruments you guys have, obviously it's physical. When you can measure something on a physical parameters, physical instrument, obviously it subscribes to physical parameters and it is a physical thing. Mind is physical because it has a chemical and electrical background to it. So, we don't see mind as a separate mechanism, brain as a separate mechanism. The neurological system, as all of us know, is right across the body, and everything that happens in every cell of this system has an impact on our mental health. First of all, what is mental health? Right now, I'm sorry if I say something abrasive, please pardon me, I'm not intending to offend anybody, but for me it sounds ridiculous that people are going about making being stressful, being anxious as normal things. It is not normal. When you were a 5-year-old child, joy was normal, isn't it? When did it so happen that stress became normal, tension became normal, anxiety became normal, being depressed became normal? Slowly this is a new normal we're establishing. This new normal is completely away or deviant from the natural existence of a human being. So essentially, let me put it in my own experience because I am neither qualified in scriptures nor in modern science. All I know is, I know this piece of life absolutely, from its origin to its ultimate, and that's all I know. I'm speaking from this context. It so happened one day I suddenly realized that if I don't mess with my mind, I'm always ecstatic. I'm just dripping ecstasy simply because I don't put my hand into my mind. So once I realized that, I really thought, this is it. I was 25 years of age at that time. On that day, after a few weeks of experimenting with it, and I saw every time I just don't touch my mind, I'm just overflowing with ecstasy, then I made up my mind. I made a plan for the world. On that day, the population was about 5.6 billion people. I made a plan that in 2.5 years' time, I will make the entire population ecstatic. I thought I have discovered something. Well, it's only later I realized in the tradition there is so much talk about it. Till then I had no clue about any tradition, all I knew was I have hit a gold mine. If I just take my hand off my mind, I'm just bursting with ecstasy. I actually sat down and made a plan. In 2.5 years, I will make the entire world ecstatic. Who wouldn't want it, I thought. Now nearly 40 years, look at me. We have touched a few million people, but that is not the entire population. But it slowly I discovered people are so invested in their miseries. Initially I thought, who would not want to be ecstatic? But people are so invested in their miseries, they are not going to give it up because they have been socially taught misery will produce results. They think anger will produce results, anxiety will produce results. A whole lot of people are writing books how you can use the energy of anxiety into a creative process, energy of anger into a creative process, resentment into a creative process. All the best for you. If you want to do everything from an unpleasant source within you, all the best. Fundamentally, if you really look at yourself, you are neither joyful, nor painful, nor miserable, nor anything. You can make yourself anything you wish. It is just that human beings have given up this choice as if they have chosen to go back in the revolutionary process. The significance of being human is just this. See, this is the only creature that you refer to as a being. You don't call a tiger a being, an elephant a being, an ant a being, because they are all creatures of compulsive, instinctual reactions. This is the only one which is capable of a conscious response to everything that happens within and outside of us. So this knows how to be. That is the reason why we have called this a being. But how far away from that have we gone? Humans know how to be, they are the only ones who don't know how to be. It looks like the other creatures know, a rat knows how to be a good rat, a tiger knows how to be a good tiger, a human being doesn't know how to be a wonderful human being. This is the only problem you're facing. Actually, there is only one problem on this planet, human being. Have you seen any other problem, I'm asking? Nobody has come to you with any trouble, isn't it? This is the only trouble, human being. Our problem essentially, how I see it is, see, I've said this in many different ways, but in the evolutionary process, from a goat to a giraffe, from a pig to a rhinoceros, something like this, it was taken millions of years. But anthropologists say that from a monkey to a man, it happened rather too quickly. So quickly they have been looking for a missing link which they have not found yet. So in a way, as all of you know, the DNA difference between a chimpanzee and us is only 1.23%. 1.23% is not much of a difference. So physiologically, we are that close to a monkey. But in terms of our intelligence and awareness, we are worlds apart from a monkey. So in many ways, our problem is just this, we have not learned to handle our own intelligence. You can give it any number of names, you can call it tension, anxiety, stress, depression, this, that, whatever. Essentially, our intelligence has turned against us. Why would our own intelligence turn against us? Somewhere we don't know how to handle it. We do not know how to manage our own intelligence. As all of you know, those of you who are working, all three of you who are working in these areas, Bala will give anesthetic, but you guys know if we remove half our brain, everybody will be peaceful. Yes or no? Right now, being peaceful seems to be such a big challenge. If you take away the possibility of being human, peace will happen, no problem. So today people are going about talking as if being peaceful is the highest goal in your life. Well, if you remove half your brain, you will be peaceful. An earthworm is peaceful, nothing wrong with him. He's a wonderful creature, he's even eco-friendly, which you're struggling to be. So, what I'm saying is, essentially human problem is, human faculties are so many and so profound that human societies have not invested in learning to handle our own faculties. If your thought and emotion happen just the way you want, would there be any of these problems, I'm asking? Forget about the other dimensions of life, just thought and emotion. You know how to make it happen. Your thought happens the way you want, your emotion happens the way you want. Is there any psychological issue, I'm asking? Reddy Garu is talking about intellectual, lack of development, or what's it called, I'm sorry? Intellectual disability, is that right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Intellectual disability. Well, if we compare ourselves to each other, each one of us are intellectually disabled in some way, isn't it so? Is there any two individuals who are exactly same level of intellectual capability? It is not so. It is only in a schoolroom, unfortunately, we are trying to put every child through the same extruder of intellectual competence, which is destroying human beings in so many different ways. But every one of us is intellectually disabled compared to somebody else, isn't it? Each one of us, at least me. You guys are too educated, you cannot say that. At least me, I know intellectually what you're capable of, what somebody is capable. If you look at it, what a child can do, many things you cannot do. This is the reality of our life. So, if we want to grade human beings like this, I think it's an unfortunate process. We are grading human beings who is who is fit to live, who is not fit to live. I heard that even in many states there are laws whether these intellectually disabled people should get a ventilator or not if they get infection, the virus infection. That's a terrible decision to make. But maybe they have to make a decision on some basis, they have chosen to make it like this, very, very unfortunate. But that's the reality of our existence. I'm saying grading human beings like this is not necessary because I have done this with hundreds of people or thousands of people around me that intellectually they were graded as very low. Most of the people who come to me are school dropouts, all right? People who are qualified will all go somewhere else. But within 6 months to 1 year, they will start doing things with me. They are managing one of the, major organization. In absolute efficiency, if you come and see our events, our centers, how they're managed, anybody from any major corporations, if they come, they see we are better managed than them. But we don't have any MBA qualified people. We don't have Harvard Business School people coming and working with us. No such thing. All intellectually disabled people only I have in some way. That's the kind of people I draw, it looks like but they will do a fantastic job because intelligence is not just in the intellect. Intellect is just one aspect of our intelligence. We have given too much significance to it simply because of the type of school education we have created, which is purely intellectual. There is no room for other dimensions of intelligence within you to function. Because of this, we will have to grade human beings. I'm asking, do you believe an ant is stupid? Hello? He's very, very smart with his life. He just knows what to do. I wish a lot of human beings, if they were as clear about their life as the ants are, there wouldn't be any psychiatric problems. Really. I don't think they have a clinic to treat them because they just know what to do. But they are more pre-programmed. Our problem is nature gave us little freedom and we're messing it up. What humanity is suffering is not its bondage. Humanity is suffering its freedom, unfortunately. If you want to exercise this freedom in a positive way, it's important that as a society, not only as individual human beings, as a society, we have to invest towards how to harness human faculties, which are so many and so profound compared to any other creature on this planet. There is absolutely no focus on that in our education systems. We are focused on how to conquer the world, how to conquer the galaxies, but we are not focused on how to take charge of our own faculties. So now you are seeing, it is not because of the virus that this is happening. This is happening, virus might have stimulated a little more problems, but half the people who are driving on the street are in some states of misery, that's what I see. You just stand in any major city, in any part of the world, and see they're all driving their dream machines, all right? When I say dream machines, what your parents could not afford, what your grandparents could not afford, you're wearing, you're driving and you're living in those kind of homes. But tell me how many people on the street are driving their dream machines joyfully? Hardly any. So all of them are sick in my opinion. They may not come to the clinic, but anybody who does not know how to be pleasant within himself or herself, it is not even about being pleasant to somebody, being pleasant in your experience of life, in some way a sickness has set in. Whether you are going to diagnose them or not, whether you are going to medicate them or not, that's a questionable thing, that is decided by the doctors, that's fine, but anybody who is walking around joylessly is obviously a sick person. You want it to become a clinical diagnosis, only then you think they are sick. No, the first roots of sickness are already there. It's like if a tree is standing, if the leaves dry up, we know the tree is getting sick. We don't have to wait till the trunk dries up to know that it's sick. Leaves are beginning to go brown, dry up in the wrong season, then we know this plant is suffering in some way. So, when you were a child, your face was like this and now it's becoming like this, that means you're sick. no, people say this is because of my profession, then don't do it, get fired. No, this is because of family, then why did you build a family? Be alone. No, because you're alone you suffer, because you have family you suffer, you don't have a job you suffer, you got a job you suffer, you're poor you suffer, you're rich you suffer. Tell me one place where human beings are not suffering. Suffering means sickness, it is. Suffering is a consequence of sickness. Suffering is a surface, there is a deeper sickness within. So, the word dis-ease is a very good word. There is no ease in you. So you're in a state of dis-ease. Whether it's physiological or psychological manifestation, how it's manifested depends on various, genetic and other tendencies, and also sociological, channels that people are creating for you. You will see in certain societies, everybody chooses to get sick in a certain way, because it is also a trend, it is a fashion. This will get me a lot of flack, I know, because there is a depression squad in India who are always after me, because I said, whether you're depressed or not is a choice. Right now, you might have given up that choice, you might have lost that choice, you may not know how to take charge of this choice, but somewhere deep inside, it's a choice to be healthy or to be sick. If you know how to make that choice, you can be out of it. They've been after me for 3 years, saying he says depression is a choice, depression happens because of this, that. I'm saying the type of chemistry that you carry itself is by choice. What kind of genetics you got from your parents may not be your choice, and it is not. But how you make the genetics that you have work within yourself is still your choice. As you were just saying, some 111 genes will behave in a certain way with yogic practices, I will tell you, every one of your gene expression can be changed. Every aspect of your genetics can be changed to function in the way that you want, the way it is best for this life. You can make that happen if only if it's approached properly, because the word yoga is being used in a very minimalistic way. Twisting, turning in a yoga studio is considered yoga. But genuinely, if you come to a state of yoga, which means you have become a perforated life, in the sense, when I say perforated life, see there are 2 holes in this nose. Suppose you really make yourself really solid, you will be dead, that's the only way you can be. It's perforated. Only because it's in transaction with the rest of the existence, this is alive in terms of food, in terms of water, even in terms of elemental stuff, and even in terms of atomic and subatomic particles, it is in transaction. This is existing in transaction. As all of you know, the microbes and stuff, it's a huge transaction going on. This is a life transaction. You are not an individual like some kind of a concrete ball. You are not that. Unfortunately, one fundamental reason why there is mental health issues in the world on the scale that it is human beings have taken their individual nature too seriously. They don't have an experience of being a constant transactional process. What is you today is not you tomorrow. What was not you yesterday is you today, just in terms of food that you eat, forget about the experiences and impressions. So, this taking individual nature too seriously is the basis of all the struggles that human beings are going through. Yoga means union, that means the individual nature and what is called as a universal process, in some way, if not absolutely united, at least perforated in your experience. You know that you are not all contained in this, not intellectually knowing, experientially you know. As Bala was quoting some studies some time ago, just watching your breath, so many people have changed their lives simply because it made you conscious of the perforated life that you are, not a concrete block of life that you are. So, those who think they are a complete individual by themselves, this whole trend of individualism is the basis of every psychological trouble that human beings are going through. Well, you might have genetic predispositions, that's a different matter, but even if you're predisposed, it does not mean you must manifest that. If you do the right things, you don't have to manifest that. If I've said something very abrasive, please pardon me. Please.
Thank you, Sadhguru. So what I've learned is from Dr. Murali, there is so much evidence for the interventions. I also enumerated the problem that is out there, and Sadhguru's concisely says that it is all within you. The solutions are within you. So I just wanted to show another set of problems that we ran through. So with the few slides, like 3 or 4 slides, pardon me for going through this. I'll go through it precisely just for what it is for. So I just wanted to show, like what Dr. Murali was saying, you can see the changes very, very early on. So this is Upa-yoga, this is pre-yoga. And in the pre-yoga states, what we did was we just took one company from Canada and gave them a simple exercise with Yoga Namaskar, and which can be learned very quickly. And what we made them do was do it over a period of 5 weeks. And you can see that all the negative subscale scores, this is measured by profile of mood scores, and all the negative subscale scores, as you keep doing it, it keeps going down. That's the power of this. It keeps going down. So there's a dose response to it. The more you do it, the better you do it. You can see that. So again, we took another company. This is a computer software company, and the CEO was very interested in seeing a change in his company. So about 80 participants took part in this. Perceived stress that I mentioned early on, the way people perceive the stress is the most important thing. And you can see that that can be easily marked with the perceived stress score. And we did the waitlisted randomized controlled trial. Dr. Murali pointed out that the most robust way of doing it. And you can see the group 1, that is the intervention group, from baseline to week 4, their perceived stress score dropped from almost 19 to 11 over a period of 4 weeks. That is with inner engineering online. Whereas the red group, the first 4 weeks, they were just control groups. They were doing 15 minutes of reading. There is a slight drop, but not to the level of what you see in the intervention group. From week 4 to week 8, the red group basically crossed over to be the intervention group. And you can see suddenly this group now drops all the way from 15 to 9. So just with 4 weeks of inner engineering online. And we told those who actually followed this for 2 weeks or more as compliant participants. So in order to see the benefits, you have to be compliant. You really have to do the practices. And this is with inner engineering practice. This was done by Paul Mills and his group from UCSD. Christine Peterson published this. And with inner engineering, you can see the perceived stress score goes down. And for those, the flat line is those who are not doing these practices on a regular basis. This is over a period of 6 weeks. You do not see a change in the perceived stress score at all. So you have to do that to see a change. The general well-being, again, you see that it improves with optimum that is doing on a daily basis, or moderate that is almost 3 days a week, or more than 3 days a week. Whereas those who did not do that, they did not see any change in the global well-being scale. Here, an increased score means a better well-being. And with the inner engineering practices over 3 months, like Dr. Murali pointed out, you also saw here a robust cortisol awakening response, and there was a 3-fold increase in BDNF. In comparison, when you do exercises of moderate intensity, you only see almost 40 to 50% increase in BDNF, that is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Low levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor has been associated with many mental states like Alzheimer's disease or depression, etc. So something important to know, that you can see a large changes in brain-derived neurotrophic factors. And here, with the inner engineering practices in a 4-day meditation retreat, you can see the depression scale actually before and after meditation goes down. Anxiety scale, it goes down before and after meditation. So this was almost in 148 participants, so pretty large study there. In over the last 3 years, so we have been trying to do these simple techniques that can be given to people, they can adapt it. What we are having problem with is about 1/3 of the people actually take it, do it the way it is supposed to be done, and they see the changes, they stick to the practices over long term. Another 1/3 of the people, they're intrigued enough, but they never really carried on. So you saw those slides where you don't have the optimal practices, you will not see a change. And so they're not seeing a change, it becomes a cycle. They say, oh, I don't see anything and I can't do it. Another 1/3 of the people simply don't bother. So despite all the evidences that we have, there's a clear problem. There is an easy non-pharmacological solution. And as Sadhguru states that all that is within you, how do we make these people comply with these practices? Here, there is no one size fit all approach. Everybody has a different way of uptaking these practices. We understand that. So a school like Isha Yoga or many other schools have a menu of practices that can be given. People can uptake any one of those and practice it on a daily basis. Our struggle is to improve the compliance, to make people do these practices the way you're supposed to do. It could be as little as 15 minutes. In another study with Isha Kriya, in about 15 minutes of meditation over almost 6 weeks, we are able to show gamma waves in people. All that you need to invest was 15 minutes a day. So despite this, my struggle, or I think I've heard also discussed with many other people, experienced investigators like David, some people have said that, people don't comply with their practices. It's not simple. It's not like a pop a pill. It's not like an on and off switch. Question to Sadhguru is, what can we do to improve the compliance for these people?
Well, I think the pandemic will improve the compliance because I've always seen when some doctor gives them a diagnosis that you have a cardiac problem or you have some minor cancer issue, you need to do something about cleansing your system and whatever, suddenly they will start doing it with such vigor. So it's unfortunate most people their sense of well-being is a very low expectation of themselves. Not everybody has a very high expectation of how they want to be, that they must be constant growth and constant improvement upon themselves. That is not a driven force in a whole lot of people. Their whole thing is about how to survive, how to have little pleasures in their life. So because of that, the compliance levels will be low. That is why it is important to teach simpler and simpler practices which are easy to comply. And also compliance goes up when the program is delivered as a powerful experiential process. This is why to teach a 21-minute Shambhavi Mahamudra, we spend nearly 32 hours of time, because without the necessary understanding and inspiration, most people will not comply with the practice. Above all, the first time when they go into it, the process of transmission should be such a big experience. When it's a very big experience, naturally, more people will stick to it. Rather than they just go and learn something, the possibility of them keeping that up is very, very low. So one important thing is to make, like we always make our programs like a major event in their life that they cannot forget, which is very important for them to comply. Another thing is to bring substantial, logical and scientific understanding as to why they're doing what they're doing, which is very important in today's world. And another aspect is to deliver it in as simple a way as possible so that complexities means people give it up. It must be very simple, easy to fit into their lifestyles. Not asking for lifestyle changes is very important. This is what I've always noticed. You don't demand lifestyle changes. Changes will happen with the life that you are. Lifestyle you don't try to change because people are so committed to their lifestyle, more committed to lifestyle than life. This is their problem. So, we always focus on the life and don't touch their lifestyle. This way the compliance could go up much more than what it is right now.
Thank you, Sadhguru. I also want to say that one study that we are currently doing is the COVID incidence, also the prevalence of the diseases, symptoms, etc., and also their stress levels and other scales. We are doing a preliminary analysis of the baseline data with the IRB approval, and I wanted to say that in about 5,000 participants who do yoga practices, inner engineering practices regularly for almost 60 days or so, their perceived stress scale levels was almost 11, compared to a very high levels of general population, about 2,500 people who do not do any yoga practices, but who are of same age, gender, and sex, and also from the same geographical distribution, they almost have 16, a median scale of 16. So that just tells us that during these times, people who are very well prepared, like Dr. Murali pointed out, or those who are doing some kind of yoga practices, at least in our study was inner engineering practices. I'm sure there are other people who have done other things. So you can only be prepared until we get a vaccine or until we get some kind of treatment. We can only prepare ourselves to face that.